Went to an AA meeting on a Tuesday morning, met 15 dudes at a cafe and cried my eyes out because I said, this is my first time at a meeting. I don't know what you talk about. And the guy leaned over and said, share how you feel. Now that idea was the scariest idea I'd ever heard. To share what was really going on for me. How did I feel? I didn't want to face any of that because it was dark. It was sad. But I did, and I broke down and cried a lot, and they clapped and moved on, and I was offended. Like, hold on, I just told you like my life story, like the biggest, darkest secrets, and you guys think I'm normal? What? I went on to have my regular Tuesday, which was play beach volleyball, go to the bar that night, drive home like normal from the bar drunk. Finally, I crashed into a car, and I knew I was done. I asked for help. I knew I was done drinking. I hadn't yet confessed all the sexual indiscretions. I got a call from my then wife, and she said, hey, is there more that you haven't been telling me? And I knew that freedom was deeply attached to the truth. And finally, I said yes. And she knew it, and I knew it. My confession of that. And that became the ending of that whole game I was playing.
Adrian, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, good to be here, man. Yes, love this. Can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I've really been looking forward to this, man. You know, I see the world, me specifically, through a couple different lenses. You know, as a coach specifically to men is one lens that I look at everything in the world through. Secondly is as an entrepreneur, really with a marketing kind of mind. So when I stumbled across your LinkedIn profile and I see here's a leadership expert and coach that calls himself the No BS coach for the restless and relentless. I want to start there because I know that there's a lot of intention behind those words, restless and relentless. How did you end up there? And what are the parallels between an individual that is living a restless life and how does that carry over into their relentlessness?
Yeah. Wow. That's a fun place to start. Thanks for having me on. Hello, Superhuman Life listeners, participants, and I hope you guys are all connected in the rebuilt recovery world. So thank you, man. And honored that you do this work to go make a difference in these people's lives and everyone's life. You know, I'm assuming yours is like me, is that you do what you need. You know, it's kind of like I teach what I need to know. Like that's a principle in my own life. Like I sometimes feel like a fraud because I'm not living up to the things I talk about. And that's why I talk about them. Is because I need, anyway, somebody told me once, it's like, oh yeah, you always teach what you need to learn. And I'm like, wow, that's true. So to your question, my friend, why do this? Why the intentional focus on relentless, frustrated founders or the restless and relentless?
Yeah, right.
I
as
like
an expert,
these people.
Right? You could go and help anybody. Why
I could help anybody.
Yeah.
Well, okay, good. Well, why are people restless, man? They don't have what they want. They're antsy. They're messed up. Like they're neurotic, right? They're restless. They want something. There's a yearning happening for them. And for me, that's all signs of life. Like all the adjectives I just used are symptoms of something not being as it could be. Right? If I'm restless, it's because I know there's a knowing I have that what I have is not what it could be. And so the fact that they are restless is a sign of life. Otherwise, people could just go be straight apathetic and despairing, and I've done that different times in my life, but just check out and not be restless, just be into Call of Duty and happy about that, or just be into whatever fantasy they're into, or just be into people-pleasing forever and hate their lives and their mom and their wife and blah, blah, blah. They could just do that. Instead, I like restless people because they're bothered. So that's the first thing, and by the way, I'm pretty restless. I've always been kind of restless. Like, what could be happening here? What should I be doing now? How could I make a difference? How who the hell am I? And how do I even know that? And how do I keep, all this kind of, I speak about it kind of frantically because that's the way it really kind of occurs to me. Not all the time. And I, have mastered, I've been practicing a lot of what I would call like self-mastery over those conversations so I can see them happening now and I don't get taken over by my restlessness. But that's always happening for me and it's not a problem for me. And for a lot of people, their restlessness is their problem. They think that their restlessness is their problem instead of their restlessness is their friend. It's a sign that something new is probably needed. And they're not, anyway, so I could do that. I could do an hour on that topic, but that's the first part, the restless part. The relentless, who is willing to commit to the next version of themselves? Who is in the midst of any kind, we've got a saying that my business partner first said, and I steal it from him all the time. He says this, a man with a vision cannot be held hostage by circumstance. A man with a vision cannot be held hostage by circumstance. So that's relentlessness. Like there's a future that I want that I can't even see right now, or maybe I might not even believe right now, or I'm in so much shame and so much despair and so much regret and so much history is so loud in my life right now that I can't even, it's just this kind of hope thing that maybe someday if God comes to save me, or if this person comes to save me, and if I finally get rescued, then something new can happen. But I will live in this type of despair until then. That Kierkegaard says there's a type of despair that doesn't know itself as despair, and it's the type of despair that we find tolerable, and we call that happiness. It's that. Who's willing to go fight for something beyond what they can see and touch and feel, like a future that's really worth having? We call that vision in our work. What is vision? Vision is being committed to a future that's worth having. So anyway, relentless folks just decide to say, fuck it, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do whatever it takes to generate something new in my life, which will always, I would probably say, will always require a deeper level of suffering than their complaining felt like. Complaining feels like suffering, but it's just the wrapping paper. The real suffering comes in when you decide to transform or to ask for help, like most of us, humble ourselves. Like I always need a lot more help than I want, because I'm an ego-based person, like all of us, like human beings are, all of us, every single one. And I need to really suffer, which is to ask for help and get honest and get real. I coach this group of men every other Wednesday, and one of the guys was talking about this reconciliation conversation with his brother. And I just said two things. Are you clean and are you clear? Clean, like, did you go through and get really clean about all the ways that you've destructed this guy, that you have had a negative impact? Are you clean with yourself? Like, have you owned all that shit? And then are you going to go talk about it with no edge, with no justification, with no why, and just go get clean? And then are you clear? Like, what do you want next with him? It might be nothing. You might not want anything, and that's okay. Or you might want something. That's great. You might want to go to Cancun with him and his family next year, or you might not. But are you clear with yourself about what you want next? So this is what it takes. And if people don't like those types of conversations, do I sound intense? If people don't like those types of conversations, they usually, and I'm kind of coming on strong here. Please forgive me, folks, if I blew your ears back there. But I'm passionate about this. For me, vitality is really the only thing worth searching for in life, because that is life. It is the experience of life. Vitality is, and it fuels everything. And without it, we have nothing.
No, brother, you're not coming on too strong, man. I mean, I've got the sense and feeling just in, the first, 6-7 minutes here that you and I are, operating in the same wavelength. So, the returning listeners, the men that have been with us, since the beginning or have been around for a couple episodes, they're feeling this. They're right connected to what we're getting to. Now, maybe there's somebody new listener here. If so, welcome. We'd love to have you stick around, because I can guarantee there's going to be some value. I love what you said at the beginning, right? It's like you coach, you say, you teach on the things that you need most. And I definitely want to kind of get to your story here a little bit, because you were sharing some things here before. But going back to the restlessness, you said something. You said people become restless because they don't have what they want. I want to maybe push that a little bit, if you're okay. Maybe in some circles, right? I think in a high performance circle, it's the restlessness can come from not having what ultimately you want or what you're working towards. But I think that there's a second group of people out there. And I think that there's going to be a lot of men listening to this today that are restless not because they don't have what they want, because they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
Curious
Do you
your
want my
thoughts around
honest?
that.
Do you want my honest answer to that?
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Okay. Okay. Good. In my kitchen, sometimes downstairs from where I'm sitting right here, I'll go like, which is code for horse shit. Here's nothing against you. Definitely nothing even against the view. Like, they just don't know what they want, though. Here's what I would say is not knowing what I want is a great story. Now, not knowing what I want is an experience, but it's not like we just have that experience of not knowing what I want. And it's fair. And by the way, there's lots of areas in my life that I'm not taking action. And I've got a story about I haven't decided yet what I want there. But even that is more responsible from I don't know what I want. So I would say confusion is a very comfortable vision. And not knowing what I want is a very socially acceptable way of saying what I think is even more true, or at least as true. It might even be more true. What is more true is I'm comfortable with acting confused. Now, because here's why for me, but and I say that like it's true. I don't mean to say it like it's gravity or like I know anything. So please,
Yeah,
I'm just
well,
offering.
here's the thing, Adrian. I think you're maybe you're misinterpreting what I said, because I don't think
Okay,
that guys are walking around like holding a sign up proud about the fact that they
I don't know
know
what I
what
want.
they don't want. I
Well,
think
give
that
an
there's an element
example.
of maybe they actually think they know what they want, but as a coach, right, I have these conversations
Yeah,
every single day.
yeah,
If you ask a series of questions to an individual in terms of a vision, in terms of the goals, in terms of what they're working towards, many times you're going to reach a point when that breaks down. Like they
yeah,
haven't fully thought it through. This is where like your work comes into play, right? Like a coach is designed to ask the right questions to pull out the vision of an individual. So I don't think most men know
that's
that they
part of
don't
it.
know what they want. I think that maybe they're lacking tools, resources, or just the ability to actually get clear on what they
Yeah,
want.
that's great. And first off, let me agree with all that. And I'm saying that that's half of for at least for me. And once again, just for me. And I'm trying to calm myself down here. I'm so excited about this conversation, and thanks for pushing back. I love it. Um, so I love this dialogue. Let's fight for the most helpful conversation here. Um, uh, so I'd say yes to all that, and for me, that's half the conversation. And that's for me, what does somebody want is actually the easiest part. To the harder part for most people, for this guy talking, and for any of my clients, is to take responsibility of this, which I say this is true, and people don't have to believe it. But we always say the system is producing the results the system was set up to produce. The system is producing the results that the system was set up to produce, which is a look at current reality. So when somebody says, "What do I don't know what I want," I'll say, "You want what you have right now." How do we know that? You have it. And you're really anybody I'm talking to, I'm sure your clients as well. They're really smart people, and we might not be able to get what we want. We can definitely get rid of what we don't want in our lives at all times, for the most part. And let's put that at 99%, and there's a 1% and whatever. If you're that person, great, go for it, tell the story. But I'm saying we can always get rid of what we don't want. So what do we want? What we want is what we have, at least up until now. So if it's making 100K a year and we want to make 1 million a year, I want to make 1 million. No, right now you want to make 100K. No big deal. But it's good to own that because that's current reality. And if you don't own current reality, you can't create anything new. Like if you don't own the fact that you either created or allowed this set of results to occur, like you behaved your way into this set of results, then there's no way you're going to create something new. That's just I would say that's just a fantasy. Because so that's why I say I agree with you, and for me that's half, and for me that's the easier half is to talk about the future. Harder for us as humans is to own the present, own the current results, because there's disappointment in there, there's failure in there, there's cowardice in there, there's a lot of inauthenticity and bullshit and stories I've been telling, and I've been enrolling people in my sob story about why I can't, and welcome to COVID and the economy and blah 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 Biden, blah blah, whatever the story is, good story I say. But here we have it. So if we can own this, then we can create that. Like I'll usually say, there's no next until there's a now. You better get real about the now. So that's what I don't know how to connect it back to the conversation before that led into it, but I'm with you as a coach. I'm there to provoke conversations, possibilities for the future, but also provoke deep sense of ownership for what we've got right now.
Yeah, no, I think we're saying many of the same things, just wrapped up in maybe a little bit different of language, right? I think what really jumped out to me that you just said was we want what we have, but then there was this element where you're like there may be something that is existing currently in our reality that we don't want. We haven't yet gotten rid of it, and that's where I want to actually go, because I know that there's going to be a large portion of this men that have a reality existing as a porn addict or struggling with something in their life right now. That is what their current reality is. But if you have that conversation with that man, he's going to tell you, no, I don't want this addiction in my life. So if we want what we have, but there's something that we have that we don't want, how do we begin to break that, work out of that, change our habits, change our behaviors?
Right on. Well, you're gonna catch the theme for me is that personal responsibility is the price of admission. So, and we know it and from a step one, right? Like we finally admit to ourselves and to God or whatever, or another person. I don't know where everybody is on this listening to this podcast, but we finally admit I got a problem. That's like step one. Second, step two would be not in the steps, step two, but for me to deepen that would be like it's a problem. Either I've been most any kind of, and I've been in recovery for 6 years. So, been in these conversations, sponsored a bunch of dudes, had a sponsor the whole time, the whole shebang. Step two of that, not in the 12 steps, but a deeper level to that is I've tolerated this. This has been like I didn't ask for help until now. I knew I had a problem probably 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. 20 years ago, and now is finally when there's been reasons why I've kept it around. Now, a lot of people will kind of take on the kind of disease model, which is totally fine and very normal in the recovery world, which is just the analogy they used when they were writing the big book back in the 40s, that it's a disease, which kind of gets it outside of ourselves and it's not so personal, right? Makes sense. Like, and they use the cancer analogy so that people, I think, could buddy up to it and stop living in the shame that most people that are in addiction live in and see, oh, no, I've got a thing, and now I just got to manage the thing, which I think is helpful. But I've also helped create the cancer in my own life in this context. So first step, now to your question, how do I, if I've got all this going on right now and I want something new, great. But I've got something going on now that sucks. And how do I get rid of that? Well, first step for me is have the real conversation. Why do I like what I say I don't want? Why do I like? It's a weird question. It's going to toss your brain in different places. But why do I like what I say I don't want? Now, most people are going to say, I don't want that. I wish this was gone. Well, I don't know. It stays around. So, something's off. Like I say, we lie. Current reality doesn't lie. Like results don't lie, right? So if I say, I'm not going to look at porn, tonight, and I do go look at porn, I wonder, what about it? And we know enough about neuroscience now that there's a lot there going on, and I've seen the functional MRIs of a cocaine addict and a porn addict. I get it. But why do I keep letting there's a lot of cocaine addicts that don't do cocaine anymore. There's a lot of porn addicts, I know a bunch of them, that don't look at porn anymore. And I don't know if I'm a special case. Most people think they're really special, like it's a unique struggle to them. I think all that isn't. So why do I like what I say I don't want? That's like an honest question. Why do I keep this thing around or keep playing around with it or keep a back door open? Or like, I'm not going to look at these 5 websites, but I'll get my little hit on this other website over here, and I don't have to lose my time, What is that about human beings? Because it's not even about the person. That's, I think, is a human condition. Getting away with shit, like feeling good is a human condition, wanting to feel good. It's a survival tactic, like looking good, feeling good, being right, being in control. That's what we call the survival techniques. So feeling good is pretty normal. It's just, being hooked into porn is just a short-term hit, short-term gain, long-term pain. So that's the first question I'd ask is why do I like what I say I don't want? And if you can get to a real honest answer there, like, what license does it give me? Oh, it gives me, this won't be new to any listeners. Like, it gives me escape. It gives me relief. It gives me distraction. It gives me a way to pay back my wife. It gives me a way to pay back the ex-girlfriend. It gives me a way to like avoid my responsibilities in my life. Anyway, it's a long list. That's just 5 or 6 just off the top of my head. Everybody knows these. If you think about it, I think about it a lot. So owning the prices I pay for telling myself the lie, which is I don't want this, but I keep it around. That's step one. Step two is owning the payoffs I get, and then owning the prices I pay. So if I keep this going on, like this kind of perpetual struggle, this kind of people probably listening hear probably from themselves or other people, it's like I'm struggling with, like they'll say I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, like the prices I pay for always being a struggler. Because that's not like neutral, right? Like being a struggler isn't a conversation about what's happening. It's a conversation about who I am. And if I tell myself I'm always struggling with something, that gives me license to keep struggling with it, right? Like it's a persona, at least that I have for myself. That's got I'm going on for a while here. Feel
No,
free to interrupt me whenever.
it becomes your identity, man. I really,
It is. It
I let
is.
you go, man. And I'm curious with you, man, because you're speaking not from somebody that has read or, watched a talk or had a conversation with somebody. I let you run because I could feel that was coming from your heart. Like you have walked much of this out in your own life. Maybe not with sex and porn, but with other elements in your life. You mentioned, 6 years sober, man. Incredible. Congratulations, man. Take us back there, man. What was going on in life, 6 years ago that kind of, was this a rock bottom moment? Was there this awakening? Yeah, walk us through your story and journey here a little bit.
Well, that could be a long story. Short story is, and it was 6 years at the end of August 2016. So, in August 31st, 2016 is my sober date. Um, that's when it was a Tuesday. Um, I was living and I'll tell the generalized version here, and you can ask as many questions as you want and whatever. I'm open, 100%. Just let me know what's appropriate. So I'd been living a double life for a good while. A very explicit one, very like uh, clear to see one for like 5-ish years. I'd felt like I'd been living a double life for a long time, meaning like there was a version of Adrian I wanted you to see, and a different version I was experiencing inside, right? So I've always kind of been a leadership guy, and I was a critical care nurse in the hospital and really fucking good at it, and loved it and saved kids' lives, and worked with families and helped them, order the chaos of like their worst days they could possibly ever imagine. And I was really good at that and loved it. And then I came out and I was a pastor for many years at a very influential church here in Los Angeles called Mosaic. And I was there for the uprise of Mosaic, and with a guy named Erwin who was
Erwin
just
McManus,
taking
yeah.
Erwin McManus. I was just taking off. Or he was just taking off, and really, we anyway became like a 3,000 person church, and I got to be around while we were expanding like crazy. And so I became a guy that was really influential there, which was wonderful. And a lot of it I didn't earn, and a lot of it I did. Um, and I was like the people mobilizer person. Like, if you want to go make a difference in the world, I created a whole thing called Serve LA. You can go volunteer in the community or travel overseas. And anyway, I was like that guy, and then ran one of the venues that we met at a nightclub on Sunday nights. My point in any of that is there was a version of me that I was comfortable presenting to the world, and there was another version of me that I wasn't as comfortable presenting to the world. All my doubts and fears and insecurities and dark side that, in that context, there wasn't definitely not a lot of quote unquote safe space. I still could have done it, and I didn't, right? I just kind of kept the hounds at bay, out of service and out of really love and the mission and all that kind of stuff. Eventually I got out of that work and out of that kind of moral spotlight, if you will. And that's when the wheels came off. I'm not surprised now. I wasn't ready for it then. I got out of the spotlight of who the person I need to be to keep up what I was doing, and I started drinking a lot. And then eventually that became kind of following all of my kind of repressed sexual tendencies, which is, long story short, like unfaithful to my wife. That started, and then that really expanded. And of course, porn. Of course, I say of course porn. For me, that was like the appetizer. I was the guy that would be traveling and go to a hotel and pick up a girl at the hotel bar or in the line at Starbucks or whatever. It was a game, and that's probably sad to say, but it wasn't like that. It was a full-on, obsessive thing, and very. I was in deep despair already because I'd kind of crossed the line that I knew I couldn't make it right. I couldn't, right the ship. So I went down, deep, dark, despairing. So still two versions of Adrian, now running a big nonprofit with millions of dollars and giving away, doing a lot of great work, mostly with prisoners, with murderers in prison. We were doing leadership trainings. And I was a mess, and I hid it from everybody. So, including my then wife. Not so well. She knew about it, but we didn't talk about it. Like that type of thing. And I'm really good and manipulative and can talk around things and cover shit up and make, lie and all that stuff. And it was pretty good at hiding it. And finally, I finally got busted in a lie, mostly around the drinking, which really grew and grew and grew. I got busted in a lie, and my negotiation tactic was, hey, I'll go to an AA meeting. I knew I was out of control. I knew it. I went to an AA meeting on a Tuesday morning, met 15 dudes at a cafe in Beverly Hills, and cried my eyes out. They had me share. They asked me to share, and I just started talking. The guy sitting next to me said, because I said, this is my first time at a meeting. I don't know what you talk about. And the guy leaned over and said, share how you feel. Now, that idea was the scariest idea I'd ever heard, to share what was really going on for me. How did I feel? Well, I didn't want to face any of that because it was dark. It was sad. And I'd been working really hard not to be the sad guy, but I was really sad and despairing. But I did, and I broke down and cried a lot, and they clapped and moved on, and I was offended. Like, hold on, I just told you like my life story, like the biggest, darkest secrets, and you guys think I'm normal? What? This is not normal. This is real. Anyway, they moved on, but 5 guys reached out to me that day, and long story short, or maybe bearable, is I went on to have my regular Tuesday, which was playing beach volleyball, drinking all day, play beach volleyball, go to the bar that night, drive home like normal from the bar drunk. Finally, I crashed into a car. Finally. And I busted up my face and got, finally had that big car wreck that was like the rock bottom. And I knew I was done. And I think that's providence. I mean, I went to a meeting that morning, met all these dudes. They reached out to me. 2 of them called me. 3 of them texted me that day. And I lied to most of them except for one of them. And I called that guy back after I got back from the hospital, after I got arrested and got back from the hospital. I asked for help. And that was on a Tuesday, and I knew I was done drinking. But I hadn't yet confessed all the sexual indiscretions. That happened on the Friday. I got a call from my then wife, and she said, hey, is there more that you haven't been telling me? And a long pause, and I knew that freedom was deeply attached to the truth. I don't know if you can have freedom without the truth, but I knew those things were very attached. And finally I said, yes, there's more. And she knew it, and I knew it. She already knew it. But, my confession of that, and that became, the unending of that whole game I was playing. So I jumped deeply into the 12-step world and sought help every place I could seek it, and worked every program as hard as I could, and worked the steps like crazy, and got to be of service, and, went through a divorce soon after that, and now I was half-time raising my 3-year-old boy and my 1-year-old girl, and my business partner left, and all my kind of quote-unquote Christian friends, they all left. Understandably so. It's a human experience. Like, there's trouble and I've been hurt, so I should run. I understand the human side of it. It's not a superhuman response. Superhuman response is, oh, you're broken? Me too. Let's talk. You lied to me? Oh, I lied yesterday. Let's talk. But most people don't do that. They run for the hills and in their self-justified way. No, not a problem. It was feedback on the lack of depth of the relationship that I had created because I was living a double life as well, right? So a lot of personal responsibility in that for me. So anyway, I'd lost everybody, almost everybody, not everybody. There was like 5 key people, one of which is now my business partner, that stayed and didn't run for the hills. And slowly put my life back together, made my amends, stood right there, didn't buy the shame story about how broken and horrible I am. Not that I didn't feel a ton of regret, which I did, but I just couldn't undo that. And my kids needed me to like keep living. So I fought for life, and I walked through the divorce process honorably and very generously, and then put a life back together. That was 6 years ago, and now I can't believe what I get to do in my life now as I've integrated all that. None of that's a sob story for me. None of it I'm ashamed of at all. It's just a part of what has crafted who I am now. So the relentless piece that I look for in others, I know that one.
That's beautiful, Adrian, and I appreciate you, sharing all that, man. I believe the way you articulated that, for me, superhuman is like, we're not like superheroes. It's like, no, every human being walking this earth is broken, and to get to the other side of this superhuman experience is accepting that, taking the responsibility, becoming relentless in your pursuit of chasing the absolute best version of yourself. I'm curious, Adrian, like, how long were you, running this double life that you had mentioned, and at what point did it kind of become conscious to you that, hey, I'm lying? And how long did you kind of run it knowing what you were doing?
Oh, I knew it really early. It's this paradox, right? So if you're pursuing your dark side, which is what that is, right? You're pursuing your dark side. It's not like letting it happen. You're pursuing it. I'm making choices. I made choices, right? It's not like it happened to me. I let it happen, right? So, at least for me, that's how I think about it. Just because I want to be really responsible. So I knew it right away, man. But the paradox is, it was both despairing and thrilling at the same time. Like getting away with shit is a fun game if you like getting away with shit. And a lot of people do. I mean, most of us do. I mean, we could do it at different levels around different things, and people like to get the deal here, or like to like, I don't know, not take
Well, you got
responsibility
you
and
got
get.
you got kids, right? I'm sure.
I
I mean, I'm
do.
not a
Yeah.
father, but I've studied human development enough to understand. Like, there's a point in
Yeah.
a child's life when they begin to push up against boundaries, and it usually happens with the dad, right? The kid's
Yeah.
gonna push to figure out where can I go, what is the limitations, but then they're gonna try to go beyond those boundaries here a little bit. So I
Sure.
agree
We all do that.
100%. It's a part of our human nature is to try to see what we can get away with that we're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Just look at Genesis. Like it's kind of written there right there in the beginning
Right on.
story.
Right on. Passing blame. It's like, oh shit, oh that went wrong. It's not me. It's the woman you gave me.
Yeah,
It's the woman. What the hell,
yeah.
God?
So where was that showing up for you then? I mean, obviously you weren't taking responsibility, so
Mm.
pursuing the dark side, but are you at times passing blame off like, oh, it's the work is too stressful. I'm responsible for thousands of millions of dollars, thousands of people. So yeah, where were you kind of passing blame out?
Well, I was really, um, so what I would call that is like being victimized, passing the blame, like acting like the victim. Definitely in my first marriage, where reality happened. Like we're two human beings, and she had shifted and was having a hard time, and I was scared about that, and then could justify it. This is not going the way it should go. It's not the way marriage should feel. It's not who you should be, and I got really victimized by that, which victimization is always filled with license. If I'm victimized, then I get to, right? I'm licensed now. Like I'm justified in, like if I'm not getting, an example would be like if I'm not getting enough sex at home, I can go get it somewhere else. This is what I deserve, right? It's also filled with like, what's the word? Entitlement. Every victim has license and entitlement. It's baked in. It's part of the payoff of the racket. Yeah, so that's what was going on for me. It was mostly being victimized, feeling like I'd got a short end of the stick in my marriage. Um, uh, you know, at whatever level that's true. I mean, there's just lots of conversations I wasn't willing to go pursue, and probably lots of stands I was willing to not take to go get that ship right. And so instead, I just took a back seat and then enjoyed the back seat.
Yeah, I'm curious, because you had began to take some steps, but what I heard you is it was actually like the rock bottom. It was the crash, the collision that really became the catalyst. It wasn't even the meeting, and it wasn't the five guys. It's like that was some steps in the way, but for you, the real change came at that moment. So, how can people avoid needing that rock bottom moment?
Well, I mean, there's a saying in the rooms like, you've hit rock bottom when you stop digging, and I could have stopped any part along the way.
So, rock bottom is
Um,
whenever you decide to change.
whenever you decide to stop digging, whenever you decide to stop the insanity. Um, for a lot of people, maybe most of us, I don't know. There's some kind of catchy phrase now, or pretty overused phrase of like people change when the pain of transformation is easier or better than the pain of what they've got,
Of
or something
staying
like
the
that.
same,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, pain. Thank you, pain of staying the same. I think that's probably true. I hadn't. It wasn't hard enough. I mean, I just thought I'd hold on to as long as I could. That was kind of what was going on for me at the time. Was I'll just hold on to as long as I could, or till I get caught, or something like. Didn't have the courage to really stand up and say, "Hey, I need help." I wasn't willing to face the consequences, which I thought would come, and they came. They came. The ones I thought would come, they came, and I didn't want to face those earlier. Um, and so I just avoided. So I could have. I mean, to your question, for people that haven't yet lost the friends and lost the family and lost the all that, um, you know, it's how would I better answer that question? Life is really short, is what I'd say now. We're all going to die. We don't know when we're going to die. Um, and you're gonna burn a lot of years surviving. If you're caught up in any kind of addiction, all you're doing is surviving and like reorganizing reorganizing the despair in your life to try to make it okay and make it, as Kierkegaard was saying, if you have a despair that's tolerable, and calling it happiness. If you're if you're powerlessness and don't know that you're powerless and then keep acting powerless, like there's nothing I can do, you're just wasting your life. That is despair. But there is a power that's greater than ourselves, and that always starts with confession. If you want to get over something, if you want to like get out of the dark, you got to turn the lights on. And that's always confession, like, and essentially, which is maybe a Christian term, but just asking for help and getting real with yourself. And, finding somebody else that's already been real with yourself is probably like confessing to somebody that isn't that honest isn't a good strategy. Find the most honest person in your life, and that is real and has a very integrated view of their own character, and that they're a sinner and a saint at the same time. I'm not. I mean, I'm very much there. We're all a mixed bag. Period. We're all light and dark, and we're all sinners and saints. We're all just this thing. And if you tell me you're the only a saint, I'm not getting close to you because you're full of shit. So I'd find the most honest person in their life and say, hey, I have some tough stuff that I need to talk to somebody about. Could I tell you about it and you not tell anybody else? I mean, you could go to a 12-step room. They do that shit all the time. Even I bring my now wife. I've been remarried now, happily remarried. We got married in end of May, and I've got 4 kids. And she used to come to AA meetings with me and just was shocked by the level of honesty in the room. So 12-step rooms, they're usually really honest. Some of them are full of victim-y bullshit, but most of them can be really honest. So
Yeah,
get honest is the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man, and congrats. You've rebuilt an incredible life here. I want to take a slight kind of pivot and change of direction just with what you just shared there, right? You've now gone on, divorce, marriage, kind of, took the responsibility. Like I was the one there. Now you have this amazing life that you've built out for yourself. I think you said you guys have, some kids together here as well. How did your relationships, maybe not even with just your now current wife, but relationships with women in general, change for you once you begin to get real, get honest, get vulnerable, and stop living this double life?
Oh, it's a big shift, a huge shift, because I'm committed to integrity now, right? I'm committed to integrity, and the only way to be committed to integrity is to want to know where I don't have integrity, right? The only way to be authentic is to own my inauthenticity. Because it's not like any of that. I mean, there's an old quote by Werner Erhard that said, integrity is the mountain with no peak. Like you just keep climbing it, right? So, um, I know my tendencies. I know my tendencies. I know what I can do, right? I know my own superpowers, and I know that I'm very influential. I don't say that as an arrogant dude. I say that just because you better own that. Whatever your superpowers are, if you don't own them, it's not humility, it's arrogance to not own your gifts. So I know that I can move people. I know that I'm charming. I know that I'm likable. I know that I'm gregarious. I know all that stuff about myself. So not that I'm always that way. Sometimes I'm an idiot and not very fun to be around, but like anybody. But anyway, so when I'm around women now, I am not committed to manipulating them for them to like me. I don't need to collect them and collect their attention. I do the opposite. It even just happened yesterday. I'm at coffee with a friend. The first guy comes over. It's a dude. He's our waiter. I'm chatting it up with him, and it, got his name, and we talked and all that kind of stuff. And I was telling jokes, and we're goofing off. And then the next person that comes over to bring the coffee is a woman. I don't ask her name. I don't, I'm not kind of fun and friendly or even flirty with her at all. Why? I don't need that in my life. And it's not like, I was polite. I'm polite and thank you very much. I appreciate that. But I'm not like going out of my way to go build some, connection with her. I don't need a connection with her. I'm married. She's not mine. I've got mine. So that's really clear. Anytime I see a beautiful woman, I see them all the time. I live in Los Angeles. I see them all the time. I've got, I say a phrase all my time. She's not mine. I've got mine. So it's really, I want to be on top of that conversation between my ears before it becomes behavior. So anyway, that's how, the relationship has shifted a lot. I don't meet with female clients in person, for example. Why do I do that? Because I know there's a deeper connection in person than on the phone. So, and professionally, I don't want them to like really this to be about me at all, or to build that kind of whatever. So anyway, I just put those kind of, I don't know, guardrails up or whatever you want to do.
That was great. You answered the question in kind of two different ways, which I really, really appreciated. I was, I wasn't setting you up for, I wanted it to go one way, because I think you did say it, right? Like when you stopped living the double life, you stopped having to project a character in every interaction, in every relationship, every conversation that you were having. And this has been my experience, right? Is in, 2019, when I stopped lying, when I, told the world who I was, all my struggles, all my challenges. It's like the ability to be present and connected with others, men and women both, right? Like I just feel engaged and locked in. I feel it here with you. I mean, we're doing this through virtual, and like I can just tell that Adrian is just locked and dialed in, present from the minute I hit, record here to 41 minutes, 27 seconds into the recording of this conversation. You've been dialed in. You haven't been thinking about how do I shape and present this. It's like, no, locked in, dialed in process. And here's the real response. But I appreciate you saying now as a married man, you have those boundaries in place, because boundaries, structure equals freedom, right? If we're trying to live a life free of our sexual desires, if we're trying to live a life free of whatever it is, the more structure and the more boundaries we can place in there allows us to show up and operate in our zone of genius, or in whatever it is we're trying to create for the world. So I appreciate you, the way that you answer that question, Adrian.
Thank you, man. You mind if I add my thoughts on what you just said? Yeah, because I don't know. I mean, I would just add, I would say it differently. The whole structure equals freedom thing. I think you end up having structure. I think aim, intention equals freedom. Now, when I say aim and intention, I don't mean like, rub the crystals together and look to the west and, burn your sage. I don't mean that. I mean get really clear about what I'm up to. And if I'm really up to, you know, if I'm really up to my own integrity, then I'm going to put structure in to help protect that, right? So structure for me is a symptom of intention. Like mechanism is always a symptom of intention. So
Yeah,
anyway, I would just add to that.
no, it's just taking it a little bit higher, right? You can't have structure in a life without the intentionality behind which the structure is placing. So
Right on.
once again, saying the same things, just one of us 30,000, the other one is kind of down here,
Right
kind of
on.
more ground level.
Right on.
Let's talk about now, you talked about how what you're doing today is the integration.
Yeah.
You've been coaching, leading, very successful prior to this, right? But this, 6 years ago, there's change of trajectory for you. So now in the leadership coaching and everything that you're building, how have things changed for you in the last 6 years?
Well, I'm much more apt to share myself. That's for sure. And there's, if you're living in some kind of like non-convicted state, like in denial, code for denial, or if you're living in some kind of shame state, then you're unwilling, you've set up some boundaries and there's a lot of things you don't want to talk about because it's personally convicting. So now that everything's on, the lights are on for me, and there's no conversation too dangerous even for me to have with myself or with the people closest to me, I'm much more free to go have any conversation with them, and share of myself. I mean, I rarely tell. I mean, my clients know that I'm sober. Most of them probably. I don't know. I don't lead with that. They definitely don't know this version of the story because my relationship with them is not about me at all. But the level of conviction I've got now, because I've faced all my demons, I'm willing to help talk about theirs in a way that's really resourceful and zero judgment or zero shame about it, because it's like it's okay. Let's just talk about it, man. It seems like you don't want to talk about this. Let's talk about it. Are you up for it? If there was some resource in here to like befriending your enemy, quote unquote, or what do we call it, hugging the cactus, would you want to know? And so there's a lot more freedom for self-expression and a lot more freedom for in conversation with people because there's really nothing I'm unwilling to talk about with them. And there's no like I'm looking over my shoulder and is the news gonna get out and all that kind of shit either. It's fine if anybody comes up from the past that I've not, talked to or reconciled with. I'm up for any of those conversations. So, that doesn't even occur to me now. When back then I'm like running a scam. Essentially, I'm presenting one person and really being another. So I am a scam. I am a criminal. And we say everybody's a criminal. Some of us are just more arrestable than others. So there's been the one word that comes to mind is a shit ton more freedom, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to, I mean, I'm not asking here maybe, specifics in what, business done or, financial or any like that, but how has that now you showing up changed the trajectory, success, growth, financially for the business in your own life here as well?
Yeah, it's amazing. So I've got a deep connection with a business partner of mine, the one I said that I called. He didn't run for the hills, and he had known me that whole time. I'd even run a scam on him. and he's probably the most intuitive person I've ever met. So it takes a lot of work, and I was pretty good at running the scam. But he didn't hold that against me. He looked at himself like, what did he miss in me? You know, and I was working hard to make sure he missed it. But he didn't run, and he's a pro. I'm 40. How old am I? 42. He's 65ish. He's a pro in this world, and you know, I'm Skywalker, and he's, you know, Obi-Wan. Is that who it is? And it's a wonderful relationship. So we've got a great team at Take New Ground, which is our firm. And it went beyond just me. I can always create more work than I want to do or than I can do. So building a team is really essential because I love generating work, like helping people, helping the most amount of people. I love doing that. I love going deep with people. I love like working with a founder and then working with their team. And that's a bunch of stuff I can't do myself. So we have built out a team. It's growing even as we speak. We just brought on 3 new associate partners in the last 9 months in order to handle a lot of the work. And we do, I mean, we're going to do like 1.5 million in services this year. And we charge a whole bunch of money for that. And it's great. We love it. It's more than, and you know, so as I've seen my own worth, as I've really reconciled and done all this work, I can really charge what I want to charge. Like I'm not hiding anything, you know, so my rates have quadrupled over the last year. Only because I said so. And, you know, I personally work with a bunch of select people and hand a bunch of work off. That's, you know, because I try to keep the amount of people that I coach at a low so that I can do what I do best, which is make work happen, like create work, i.e. business development or sales or whatever you want to call it. I'm the guy. You sit next to on a plane, we're probably going to work together at the end if you want, you know, like I'm that guy. I just love it. I love helping people.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of the success here today, you know, like when you know who you are and when you know who it is you're here to help and you believe and are certain you have that solution, like the ability to ask for whatever it's worth, like that just really becomes easy. It's like you're not selling, persuading. It's like, hey, I have the solution that you're looking for and I'm able to articulate it because I know you because I was you a year ago.
Sure.
It makes a lot of sense. Let's lock arms and, you know, change the world together.
I just sent that email right before we got on. I sent an email to a kind of guy that's like a new friend. I've been 4 or 5 conversations with him and his team, and you know they wanted to do this work, and I sent them the appropriate proposal to get the work done, and they only have 40 grand over the next 18 months. I said this just doesn't work, man. I'm not gonna. It's not going to work because of how little you're going to invest in it. It's not going to work, and I don't want you to blame me in 18 months. So instead, I can just coach you at that rate, or half of that rate for 6 months, and let's do that. Why don't I coach you, and then we'll get to the team stuff later when you can go get the cojones to go raise some more money. So anyway, yeah, it's really lovingly unapologetic is what I go for. Like I'm not lowering my standards, and I love you anyway, and no wrong for this guy to not have a vision for it, which is all it is. It's not even about me. It's his own vision. He doesn't really believe in this stuff that much, which is cool. No big deal. Call me when it gets worse.
Yeah, Adrian, this hour has flown by, brother. I mean, we've helped a lot of men here today. I appreciate you and not really getting into any of the leadership and just having a very important conversation for the men out there today. So I really appreciated your time here. Let people know where they can find you, where you're hanging out online, socially, plug your podcast. If you're interested in maybe finding out what you guys are doing over there, Taking the Ground, we do have, some CEOs, executives here on the audience as well. So yeah, plug, where can they connect with you? And we'll bring today's conversation to a close with our last and final question.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm just thinking about the listeners here, and thanks if you're still listening. Thanks for listening. I've been in your shoes, been there, something close to it anyway. A lot of the demons you're facing, I get it. At least for me, a lot of that behavior was compensating for other stuff in my life that wasn't working. And if you're a CEO of a company, leadership is very complex, as you know. And there's a bunch of shit you don't want to talk about and don't want to deal with, and human beings involved, which makes things really complex. So our heart is for leaders that really want to make a difference on their teams and in their own life, and like really get real and make their life count. So we've got some free resources for anybody that's listening. Even so, if you go to the Naked Leadership podcast, I like to plug episode 121. It's about fearless leadership, which is by itself is an oxymoron. If you're going to lead, you're going to be in fear, period, because you can't venture without having some sense of fear. So the Naked Leadership Podcast. We call it that because we have the real, raw conversations about what it really takes and how do you really need to think about it to make something work. And if you're like, how do I hire people? How do I fire people? How do I have conflict? How do I align people around a vision? Anyway, any concerns you've got about the moment you're in, we've done an episode on it. So check the Naked Leadership Podcast out. Love to be a resource to you guys there, and that's free, of course. That's go to Apple or go to Spotify right now and check it out. And I'm on Adrian.K on Instagram.
Awesome. I appreciate that, brother. Guys, yeah, we will have that episode plugged down there. I'm looking forward to be linking up for a conversation here pretty soon on the Naked Leadership Podcast with you and your team. So we'll also, when that episode is live, if it's before this one release, we'll attach that there as well. But Adrian, I know we're coming up on the time, man. Guys, get out there. We'll share all this. We appreciate you for tuning in. Hopefully something in today's conversation, whether you're in the heat in the trenches right now, or there's somebody in your life that is going through some of these struggles. Do us a favor, but do them the blessing by sharing today's conversation with them. But for Adrian Koehler, Frank Chris, host here at Superman Life, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.